Right, we're going for it, ready?
Yep.
Hello and welcome to a very, very special edition that was going to be going live on Construction Sport TV. It's I'm here with the man, Mr. Mark Eastwood of SAS-fit. We have a little bit of history together over the last 3-4 years, don't we, Mark? So I was approached by Mark, I think, just starting off how it kind of, I think, through LinkedIn, I think, probably was, isn't it?
It was.
You put a little something over LinkedIn and said, this is what we're about. You've seen what I was pushing, and then said that, could we have a coffee? You're in Manchester, I'm in Essex, and where can we meet halfway? And for me, luckily, it was London.
Yeah, it wasn't. And
So, yeah, we met for coffee. I remember, yeah, because I'd been away the day before, and I think I wasn't even too well at the time, and I thought I was absolutely shattered. I thought, I've got to go to London. I need to have a chat, because there were a few things you said about. And
so, as I said to you before, I'm quite sketchy with this because it was 3.5 years ago. And so, was it after that coffee that you spoke to me on the phone about yourself?
No, I think we spoke on the phone for quite a while, didn't we? Before it, and I think you said you're going to be in town.
So that was pre-coffee.
Yeah, I think and said it because I was fascinated. I think the thing what I said. So just to go about, so we'll go into more detail on what Sassafit does. But what you said about the treatment in terms of how you go about treatment and all this kind of stuff, and then you mentioned train drivers, the kind of rail sector as well, and that rung a lot of truths to me and the industry that I've been working in as well. And then I realised, yeah, there's definitely there. So yeah, tell us just if we'll go for it all really. I think, Mark, as we both said, we're just going to see where this goes, because I think we've both got brilliant. We're going to end up pretty interviewing each other throughout it. So.
Okay, and hopefully it ends up being very positive,
Yeah,
no matter how, no matter where it goes, really.
I'm excited because it's the best way, and I'm not one for notes, and let's just go with it. But I'm sure everything we think we're going to touch on will go way beyond it. But just quickly, so what is SAS-fit, Mark?
So Sassafit, we're a specialist company. We work with a number of different industries now, construction, oil and gas, railways, emergency services, performing arts. And basically what we do is we're very different to your NHS and EAP counselling CBT service. We believe that there's a root cause for most mental health conditions, and that if we can find it between us with your therapist and yourself, that we can not only identify the root cause, but we can treat it, remove it from the equation, and therefore put you in a position where you've made a full recovery, drug-free, for the rest of your life.
Yeah. So you literally would be in a position where, obviously from what I know, it's a business would come to you and say something's happened to one of our guys, a traumatic event's occurred. We need to see to them. And you just want to see to them quick, don't you? You don't want them to go home and wait for...
Yeah, so as an example, say there's a traumatic incident on a building site, and so what it does with building, it's quite different. That would affect not only the people directly involved, for instance, if there's a death, it's not just the person who's been killed, it's the people who work with that person every day. So the trauma can be quite widespread. So what we want to do with our clients is that they would let us know that this incident has occurred. They give us the names and contact details of the people who were involved, and we would immediately contact all of those people. And if they want help, that it's there. So it's a very positive from the employer's perspective. From the employee's perspective, they quickly understand that this is somebody who wants to look after my mental health well-being, and then we pick it up and we take it from there. It's all confidential. When we talk about immediate, that would be a text in the first instance. We get somebody's name and telephone number. We send them a text because we don't know what is going on in their world. There might be something going on in their personal life. There might be something going on in their work life. So we don't want to speak to them when they're at home if there's a home element. We don't want to speak to them at work if there's a work element. So we text them and just say, this is who we are. You've been referred by your employer. Give us a time and a date to ring you that's convenient to have a chat. And then that's where the process starts.
Yeah. So that's what I think my whole, from 3-4 years ago now, that it rung a lot of home truths to me in the way that you do it and the reasons you do it. Not just personally, but from what I could see across construction sites as well, because I've said this multiple times, and all due respect to people and loved ones of victims that unfortunately get killed on construction sites, but I've seen so much effort go into this person who's kind of died, and this sounds quite morbid actually, saying it, but please bear with me. It's kind of the person's moved on in a way, and they're gone, and then people think that's the victim, and they've gone. And my fear is like there's just been 10 people who've just witnessed that firsthand, and those people around aren't treated like victims, and they're left and just dispersed on. We had it whilst I was working on Crossrail out in the East London area. We had myself and another guy. I went to one station. We literally done a flip of a coin to see who goes to what station. It didn't matter. I chose one, he chose the other. And he witnessed firsthand, literally someone stepped in front of a train straight away there and then. And fortunately, selfishly, it wasn't myself who witnessed that one. But he was literally told, look, do you want to take a few days off? And he said, I can't afford a few days off, I'm self-employed. So he said he was back tomorrow and that was it, nothing else ever again. And I know to this day that's affected.
So two things I can pick up on there. First of all, if you say that there's been 4 or 5 people affected by that incident, they've all been affected differently.
Yeah.
If you think about life story, trauma story, past history, everybody is unique. So I used the analogy earlier when I was talking to you about going into a car garage with a single spanner. You wouldn't do that with a modern car. Say to a mechanic, can you repair that? But don't use anything more than just that spanner. From a therapy perspective, you can't just have one therapy and expect it to solve every problem that comes to you. So our therapists are highly trained, time served. They've got lots of therapy tools in their box, and then their skill is to understand your signs and symptoms and how you've been affected, not just by that incident, but previously in life.
Yeah.
And then unravel all that, peel away those layers of an onion to get to the bottom of it and treat everything that's in there, not just that traumatic incident. If you talk to 2 people who have gone to the same incident, they've got a different take on it. If we do a lot with the rail industry with train drivers involved in suicide and fatality, there are occasions when we treat the train driver and the guard who was at the back of the train. Same incident, same time, same day, same train, same person, very, very different set of circumstances. So everything that we do, every time we treat somebody, it is as unique as you are, as your story is, as your life has been, because that's the only way to deliver a full, successful solution.
Yeah. And that's, again, it's just literally... It makes so much sense now because I suppose when I first heard it was a bit music to my ears really, but then now, years and years later, I don't think I've ventured out of anything other than what you guys do and what you've obviously taught me and the way that you envisage it. But even that, like saying, the industry's full of it, Mark. I see it literally day in, day out. It's and has been for the last 4 years. 4 years I was probably talking about people I knew across a few sites here and there and didn't directly know the people who literally have gone to the depths of taking their own life on site. But now it's probably weekly, if not multiple people a week, that we're hearing people we kind of are connected to in one way or another.
So are you seeing a lot of tick box exercises?
It's just unbelievable, Mark. And we know, and there's reports coming out that it's not 2 a day, it's way more than that. And it's got to be, it was 2 a day 5-6 years ago, and we've had a bloody worldwide pandemic since then, and we've all been imprisoned for 3 years to a certain degree.
I think one of the things that you find in mental health, that I completely get awareness, it's proactive, it's something that everybody can control the spend on. If you've got an individual site or you've got one of the major construction giants, they can all control training somebody to do mental health first aid. They can all control how many posters get put up at the site cabins and things like that.
Recognise now that it isn't working.
I agree, because...
I think it's something we agreed on years ago as well.
Yeah,
I realise that.
From my perspective, and I know people think I'm biased, but the point is, at some point, you've got to signpost that person, those people, for specialist help, support and assistance. And so the value in any awareness campaign has always got to come down to not the proactive, but the reactive. What do you do when people have been affected? And of course, that takes us onto the stigma side of things. There's only one way, in my opinion, to beat stigma, and that's to show people that if they put their hand up, they get the help that they deserve, that they need, and then they go back to doing the same job they did before, because there's not a mental health condition that really it should affect your employment status, and it certainly shouldn't be career threatening and certainly not life threatening.
Yeah, and I always said about the stigma side of it. I said there wouldn't be a stigma if we could just be educated. Like you say about the awareness, I'm very kind of cautious about making sure that we, and again, speaking to yourself before, and you've explained that to me before about the awareness, that everything we do, I try and say, is about the education side of it, so people just understand a little bit, and they understand if they need help, they can get it, and that. The awareness is done. I always say the awareness is done. We knew this problem was there years ago, and my ultimate aim, I suppose, in a way, would be 1, to change legislation, and 2, for me personally, I'd take the criticism for it if I'm driving my own ego or whatever. But I think it'd be brilliant for someone who's a ground worker to change the HSE or get them to listen, because my theory on it is there's the HSE, and going back to the sport, I believe should be held responsible, accountable, and in a way charged in some way to say it's been completely it's all negligence, because the definition of negligence is pretty much something's wrong and you've not fixed it.
And I think one of the biggest misnomers is that and something that we come up against all the time is that people still think health and safety is about work boots and and harnesses, and of course it is. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm IOSH and NEBOSH trained. I get that. I completely understand it.
But why would you? Never just interrupt. But why would you stick well-being on the end if that's yeah? We always say this makes it. So why you add it to the end? You've said health at the start. What's the difference? Well-being is just part of the health.
But people do see the health as being physiological.
Yeah, it's madness. Yeah.
It's mental health now more than it was. Listen, when we first launched the company 10 years ago, I was treating a lot of people with bad backs, ankles, knees, that kind of stuff. And over that 10-year period, I had to retrain as a psychological therapist. Otherwise, I'd never do anything. Yeah. Everybody that comes to see us now, 99.9% of people are mental health. Conditions and complaints and different types of trauma, and
But I've done a lot of research in my own time on pretty much the injuries on site and because of RIDDORs, thousands of RIDDORs reported every year, and only fortunately deaths on site is down. I think it went down a little bit last year. Actually, done all right, but it was averaging around 36 a year. But then if you look at all those things, they can be avoided. They would be avoided if those people's mindsets are in the right place, and if those people mentally in the right place. I've seen it firsthand with crane drivers and slingers, where a slinger has had to be reminded. He's literally, the driver stopped and said to him that, "What are you doing? You're not in the game." They knew each other very well. Fortunately, he said that you've just done something wrong. What's something minor? And he said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I think I've left my locker open and my wallet's in there." And that was it. And his mindset wasn't on the crane, it was elsewhere, and that's when people get killed.
Unwanted distraction, a lot of people call that. That's just a little phrase that comes up all the time.
My theory is that is mental health. That is, to me, it's just this knowing your mindset is being switched on.
But so is you've not slept well for the, back 100%. A couple of months ago when you had the hot spell. Yeah. And of course I live in Spain, so I get it all the time. But when you guys had the hot spell over here, you think to yourself, if there's people out there that are doing safety critical work and they've not managed to go to sleep properly for the last 3 days, they've got a mental health problem because the concentration. Yeah,
there's many things affected me over the years, but I guarantee you one thing, the worst thing I've ever had is sleep fatigue. That is savage. That takes your brain to a whole new world.
It's a torture technique, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, it's madness. But so going on, I suppose, really, so after them conversations, I remember that. So I get, unfortunately.
I'm going to cut across you now, Stephen, because the question I wanted to ask you, because obviously everything that we've done, everything we've spoke about, all the treatment that we've done for you as SAS-fit, that's confidential. So I don't know anything about your story other than we had that phone call one day, and I wanted to take you back to that because, again, I think successful therapy sometimes puts people in a position where they can't really remember where they were when they first picked that phone up, and and so that was a telephone call that I think wasn't even pre-arranged at the time. I think you just rang me one day and I was somewhere, and I'm tempted to say that phone call was well over an hour.
Yeah, it was. I remember where I was sitting in my van on the side of the road, not far from home, and I was in a position where I just recently lost my cousin at the same time. she passed away, and my boy was just about to be born, or we may have been born now, thinking about it. It was around the same time all that was all coming together, and I just literally was like, if I'm going to try and be a responsible father and a responsible person going forward, then I need to do something about it. And now there's no time. What hasn't been done in the past, but the second best time of doing something is now, sort of thing, isn't it? So and then I get, even now I get approached by so many different companies and different things doing stuff online. But obviously with what you was saying, which just struck home a little bit, I thought, and I remember saying to you, I said that I'm more than happy to promote to my network of companies, do it and use your support. But I said, I think my words pretty much were along the line, not until you use me as case study number one. So I thought, well, how can I go and promote something if I don't know it and believe in it? And even to this day, I can't promote anything that I don't believe in. It's a complete farce of my sales technique, shall we say.
But again, much of the reason for me agreeing to do this with you, because I think it's important that people realise that full recovery is possible. Yeah,
so that was it, and it was kind of just understanding, because going back to, I suppose, some of the traumatic stuff as it's touched on in my life, and I think we mentioned it before, it always rings true to me. We mentioned earlier before we recorded that my mum had a troublesome pregnancy with me in the sense that I was born breech, and all these kind of pressures on me could play a part. And it's one of those, I suppose, with mental health is how do you know? You can't ever say it is, but there's all these things that when you start doing a bit of education and learning, you put two and two together, don't you? So that was, and then obviously I was caught up in the incident where I had sulfuric acid thrown at me. And then even from that, I then had sleep issues after that quite heavily, and I'd done quite well after in terms of physically being getting over it. But there was a lot of things off the back of that in terms of problems sleeping that I realised there's something wrong, and the NHS put me forward to 3 counselling sessions, and at the end of those sessions, this was 12 years ago now, I think 10, 12 years ago, and they said, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. And at that time it was you'd heard about it briefly through the newspapers with Afghanistan and Iraq and all that stuff, and I just said, well, I've never been in the army. I wish I had at the time, and I would always love to have been, but I never got there. And I just kind of thought to myself that I don't warrant it. So that was kind of like ignored it and put it on the back burner. That went through the next troublesome few years of problems. And it was only when my mental health got to a point where I probably did cover up really well and dealt with it well that my body started to show that something wasn't right. And then that led on to what was ulcerative colitis that I had. And that ended up with 2-3 years of major surgery. And and the removal of my bowel and all this kind of stuff, all gory stuff, but all this different stuff that happened. And then it was only then, not far off of that, someone said you realise that your stomach is the brain for pretty much mental health. And then it did it like, we always quit nervous poos before rugby. I always say get nervous poos if we go and play a game, and it's just butterflies in your stomach, isn't it? And anxieties in your stomach and all these things. And everything I just started linking up. I was like, this all goes back to one, trauma, but two, the stomach just takes everything. So I was like, is there some link between the trauma that I've potentially witnessed or seen? And I almost kind of think it's probably multiple little traumatic little things in terms of just literally what you see through social media as well and things like that, where it all accounts as something.
And potential, because obviously you work on building sites. And
building sites, 100%. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen, squash limbs. I've seen the back. I've had train. On the train side of things, we've been there on platforms before, and we've been told that we've got a train coming through to use the train wash, turn around because it was involved in a fatality. And when you're getting told, don't look at this, guess what? You look at it. And this blokes, when someone says don't do something, you do it. It's just a natural reaction of, it's like I think there is a science behind it. And that's why I actually said don't walk by now. And all these things, don't use don't in a word to tell people not to do something.
I should say at this point that I have a railway background. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's where it linked up, because I think I could relate to it. And as you
I used to do on-call as a manager, and I've been to 3 fatalities, 2 in the aftermath and 1 where I was unfortunate enough to be on a train. It wasn't my train, I had nothing to do with it, but managed the situation because the driver went into shock and shut down. And now, so there's two kind of major, that one and the one I said about the platform. I wasn't there, but the guy I knew did have. There was a number of those, but you heard them all the time, and I guarantee you now, all those rail lads out there, and I still speak to them. I was with some of them today.
they've all seen something, and they've all seen something, and not one person, not one of them has ever had someone come up and say, lads, can we just do something? And I'm not saying, can we give you a toolbox talk?
When I got down from a train that I just mentioned, the train that I was on that hit somebody between Manchester and Liverpool, and went and dealt with that, I was the first to the body with a paramedic. That one affected me. The first two were, as I say, aftermath, quite messy. But that one was a guy, he was kneeling in the forefoot, and I thought he was still alive.
Yeah.
Until I got there, and parts were missing, and so. The point I'm making is that my recovery process was, there was another manager on the train, and we both rang each other the next day and said, "How are you feeling after yesterday?" "Yeah, not great." So we went to Costa Coffee. And that was how you recovered from that, you know.
Chew the fat.
Exactly, you know, and then just you've got each other's back, but it's not. So if I just take you back to where you were before, because you said you had counselling.
Yeah.
So once you'd done those periods of counselling with the NHS, what came after that?
I always kind of said that I was labelled and let go, but then at the same time, the NHS were brilliant and had been brilliant and always really have dealt with me brilliantly, with multiple things. I think my dad always says I've been on a tour through the whole of Broomfield Hospital. Every ward in there I've been to at one stage or another now, I think.
Well, they cast you adrift, basically. You had so much therapy.
Yeah, adrift, and in a way, not all of them. I was 21 years old, and I had no interest in literally understanding it. I just want to get out and live my life, really.
So no therapy from then until you came to us?
Nothing then. And there's probably not of things, and it was just one of those things. And at the same stage, I was a young lad growing up through my 20s. I fortunately had a fantastic family and a dear lady who's now my wife behind me, sort of thing, who supported me all the way. But then there's so many things other, and even some characteristics I have this day where you just kind of, I'm such a just push on, crack on, and just a lot of people say you're just going around throwing grenades everywhere, and just then the people behind you is having to support people behind you to help clear it all up. But that's the way I am. But yeah, it's just like I used to think I've got to change it. Now it's like no, let's just learn how to deal with this properly and enjoy it. And that's why I'm a million miles an hour everywhere I go. But I love it, and I thrive on that energy that it gives me, and being motivated like that. It's tough for me to try and change it. But I come to that point. I thought. Yeah, I wasn't. Long after my cousins had passed away, and then my little boy was born, and the emotions of a newborn baby, and then losing a loved one were just like boom. And then, it was like, what do you be? You know what I mean? This is supposed to.
My own son go through that.
Yeah, and it was just like the hospital was just different wards sort of thing, between one at the end and one at the start. It was just like boom, and so that was madness. And then I just thought I want to just get this under control, really. And then I thought, that's case study number one, Mark. Let's see what we can do. But I think there was nothing. I'm willing to speak about it and go right into there, really.
So from somebody who had previous therapy, where were SAS-fit different? How were they different in the way they approached it?
It was kind of, to be honest, even when I was 21 years old, I'd say that first thing, I can't really remember. I remember who it was, but I think it was. I got it. I remember we went through it come down to just kind of what I love about it when it goes to, I suppose, a lot of different kinds of things is, as you always say, it's finding what works for that person. But it just went back to talking about a few things and touching base with them, but then just going through breathing exercises and that kind of stuff. And then when I was told after the first session we had with yourselves, I literally thought, you said literally like, just to let you know that tonight we've kind of opened up a can of worms in a way, but your subconscious has been kind of looked into, and this has come to light. And I walked away thinking, I feel like Mystic Meg's talking to me, and someone's literally in my head. And I kind of took it I'm not too sure if I'm sold on this or not. And I put my hands up and say I'm not too sure on this. And I was this kind of naive bloke thinking, it's like his subconscious a thing. I didn't even believe in that. And then that night, he said literally you might wake up and have a few bad dreams like you had 10 years ago and have had over the years. And that night, bang, I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was wide awake again, and I thought, they're in my head. I was like, well, someone's in my head. Something's happened today, like in that talk, that I need to kind of really listen. I need to go back and speak more. So I did, and had another session, and then come away, and the same thing again. It was kind of just not as bad. I don't think it was more that first session. I remember that night. And then the second session, it was good. And the third, and then, Yeah, and then
but you felt differently after the first session.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. And it was strange. Just go in there, and it wasn't go in there and it's not go in there and open up about everything and cry your eyes at someone. It was just sit there and just, in a way, chew the fat with someone that actually understands it, in a way.
And has the tools to make
and
it.
has the tools to do it, yeah. So there was a few different things in there that they kind of went through and said, now thinking, I do it disservice, I'll try and explain it. But there was a few different things in there what we'd done, literally just the breathing exercises and listening to a few audio recordings. And then it was then again, I remember going out and we was just training for a big walk that we were doing, I think, not long after. And I always go and run for 60 minutes. I never try and race or beat any score or any time. I just go at whatever pace I can. So I'm 15 plus stone, so I'm no Mo Farah, put it that way. But I just go out because I enjoy running. And then I got to literally 50. I stuck some of these, not all the way through, but say for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of my run. I just listened to a few of the audios that you guys had sent me. And I got to 55 minutes and I was like, I still feel quite good here. I might just carry on. And I'd never run past an hour in my life. I run 2 hours exactly. And I'd just done two loops that I knew took an hour each time. My second hour was the fastest hour I've ever done of the running, ever. And that to me was just kind of off the back of that. I was like, I've just benefited from a sports background in myself and exercise like that. I'm sleeping better. Yeah. My lifestyle's changing better, and the kids come along. I'm trying to be a better person, and I literally just thought this works so well. And then I just looked at professional sport and how they use it, and all about small margins. And as a Sky race team at the time I spoke to, it was all about these little 1% every day. If you can go 1% every day and be a better person, minimal gains. Yes, and if you can just keep on doing that, you'll get somewhere. And I just thought, why are professional elite athletes using this and people who are looking at ending their lives using this? This is both ends of the scale. Why is there such a huge market in the middle that are just ignoring it? It just bewilders me. And I've go on sites now and speak about it. I'm not saying go like so. I'm not going. This not going to do. Let's not train up a construction worker to become a counsellor in a 2-day course, or sell them a course that thinks they're going to be a counsellor over 2 days. It's a complete waste of time. But my theory is, why can't we just enable the HSC? This is how my head works, tries to work, shall we say? But the HSC that will hold the pot what literally says, can the money be put into the industry to enable it to improve itself? So if we put pressure on there, they will then make changes eventually one day, hopefully, and then they'll turn around and say to all these big construction companies, you've got to put this stuff in place. There is an allowance now in your program and in with budgets and this kind of stuff where you will be given the opportunity to make sure you're not penalised. So you just like health and safety was in terms of PPE and the safety equipment 20, 30 years ago, and how they've introduced that into it now. Now it's just part of every day. And I do think mental health's got to go that way.
And people have got to expect to get better.
Yeah, 100%. That's the thing.
It's not about acceptance and taking drugs for the rest of your life. It's about understanding where those symptoms came from, treating those symptoms, and then making a full recovery. Would you say you were fully recovered? Yeah, 100%. And I always, almost to the point of, in terms of full recovery, I wouldn't say, I now live without any of it and it's all gone, it's all absolutely perfect, but it's fully managed. But it's life experience, and so you need to keep it. And this is one of the things I think that people fear. You don't take that incident away. You don't take those feelings away. What you do is you address the emotional attachment. Yeah. So that you can understand. You touched on it earlier that if you've been affected by trauma, it will affect you in such a way that you do things differently. Yeah. But you need to accept that that's normal for you. Your reaction to that trauma was normal. When you come out the other side, that's normal. Yeah. And of course there is an effect. You don't wipe somebody's memory clean. They still have that memory because, say a similar thing happened again, you need that experience to understand how to react.
So what I get now is, again, WhatsApp videos is a nightmare with blokes and WhatsApp and different videos that get sent around, and what people put just straight onto social media. Like little triggers were hurting. And there's things that can trigger me. I know there is. I've seen stuff. And someone will send me something and I watch it, not realising what I'm about to watch, and you see it, and I know myself that's my night's ruined.
But you know that once you've done the therapy journey, you can tap into the coping strategies that we've given you.
Yeah.
And those audios you mentioned earlier, I should just clarify that what we do is we do the therapy sessions and then we reinforce it with those audios. So you might see one of our therapists, she goes through that session that's confidential, whatever's in there stays in the room. And then afterwards, to reinforce the work that she's done, it's a little bit like reading a Paul McKenna book. If you just listen to the CD at the end, it doesn't work because the triggers are in the wording in the book. So you've got to have had the therapy session first, because those audios wake up, they trigger the work that you've done during the therapy session, and so that's why you can future-proof yourself.
Yeah, so I even think I've in a way used those, but I'm not sure it's supposed to be like this, but I've almost understood that with the audio stuff that you've given me now, and I feel like I've even transferred that into my own kind of music kind of playlist in a way, and I kind of, so I know, and I will know. My wife even knows sometimes. I'm like a dog, and she'll just say, "Go for a run with you." I definitely go for it, and I will, and that's what I do, and that's my way.
And so you still use the audios?
Yeah, to a certain degree. Yeah, I've got them on there. If I'm in a bad place, I know I can. Yeah, they're there, and but it's just a case of just like, it's a complete strength. I don't understand why someone's going to go and potentially do a sales pitch to someone what could have an extremely large, will make a huge difference on this person's life or career. And if that person's ringed up with anxiety or nerves and that, why is that person not going and getting some treatment the week before, or using some way of understanding, like you would?
And a lot of that would be one session.
Just that. So why, if you were going to go and do a marathon in 6 months, you wouldn't just turn up and do it, would you? You'd go and train for it. So if you use what you guys do in terms of just go, look, I'm going to be doing this massive presentation next week, and there's a lot riding on it, and I want to make sure I stand up there. My brother-in-law done it with me, and it was fantastic. He'd done it for my. I'd done a best man speech, and he went through everything with me prior to that speech, and he took me in his kitchen, and literally I was uncomfortable as you like at the start, and he was going, now read to me, and now breathe, and now read, and now breathe. And I went from nervous as you like about doing a best man speech 6 weeks prior to literally I was like, I can't wait to go and do this. This is going to be brilliant. And I stood up there and it went brilliantly. It went perfectly. And I've absolutely loved it. And ever since that day I was like, that was so good. But it's that kind of piss poor presentation, piss poor preparation leads to piss poor performance. Yeah, that kind of thing. And I just thought, why aren't we doing that mentally for people who want to go and do stuff? There's so many. I just think it's so wrong that it's relied on one for just elite sportsmen to get the fine margins.
Well, even elite sportsmen, Stephen. You know, we've treated over the last 10 years. We've treated one or two individuals privately because we don't just work as a SAS-fit who do the corporate work. We have a private side to it as well, and it's quite surprising in some respects that even elite sportsmen still think that. You know, there are very, very limited options out there for them to deal with their elite trauma, because that's what it is. You know, these people are top of their game.
There by something anyway, aren't they?
Exactly, but they're still affected by mental health like everybody else, and I think people shy away from it and think that because you're successful, you know, on the running track or on the rugby pitch or on the football field, that you don't have problems at home, and it's inherent that they do. But the point is that, you know, a lot of the time we average 5 therapy sessions, even in the complex cases that we do. I mean, you did 3 yourself. To go from PTSD to no PTSD in 3 sessions, and that's not only you know, full recovery, as I always say, is not only probable, it's possible, and it's probable. Rather, I got that back to front.
I think, construction, that not just obviously you guys that are doing, is absolute proof in the pudding with myself that I fully believe it, and will back it to the cowsheds, whatever they call it. And literally, I just think that there's a way of, when a trauma happens, that people need to realise, as if they had an open wound, you just can't get seen to. That it needs. That's probably where the stigma is, or not stigma, so lack of education is. Where people go, he was involved in this, and it could play havoc later, so just go and get yourself checked quickly. I think so. If people can just get that quick check, like you say, it could be 1 session, because they could be absolutely fine, but just give them the right tools so they understand, and that's where the industry, like construction, is. I know for sure that there is some serious issues with construction, and it's getting worse. I've heard the most horrific thing I've ever heard in terms of construction suicide last week on site in the middle of London. A tier 1 contractor, someone took their own life. I won't go into details. They've done it on the building site, on the site, was found on site dead, and like I say, I won't go into. It's not my place to go into the full details of it. But if that was if someone fell off the scaffold, if someone was crushed by a machine, that site would probably be shut. I'm not too sure the circumstances of what happened on the site straight after, but the HSC would be all over it. It'd be all over Construction News. It'd be all over Construction Inquirer, because they report everything about it. When someone stubs a toe, it goes out there. And that would go down. The riddles would all be affected, and big bosses, their bonuses would be affected, and this project would be looked at. And this guy's just gone the most horrific way of taking his own life on the building site. And not 1 second, not one mention as it had gone out. I heard through people that I know, and I won't go out and air that, because it's not my thing. But what I am airing is that company are pretty much trying to put it under to hide it. Let's not let everyone know this happened on site, but it's not happening. That's not happening at home or away from work, so they can't blame the job. It's happened on a building site. Another contact of mine, a very good friend of mine as well. He had someone land outside his door, or his office desk, and literally, and he's dealt with it firsthand. He's seen a couple of people now, and I've spoken to him, and he's doing well. And it was only when I spoke to him last week, he said that's happened 6 or 7 times since he's been on that job. He works under a big bridge.
And I think the important thing, Stephen, is though, when you're on these building sites, you know, the management, the colleagues of these people, they must see a difference. You know, I'm not saying a huge difference, but there must be timekeeping. Somebody's dishevelled who was always on top of the game. Something happens, and if you know people well enough, I'm not saying it's a perfect world. You know, there are some people that are very clever at hiding the issues that they're currently working through. But yeah, early intervention and confidential as well. That's what it's got to be. And then the other thing, as I said earlier about stigma, it's got to be. You know, I'm of an age, so I can go back to the 70s American police programs, and what happens when somebody does something wrong? Give me your gun and your badge. You know, the thing is, in them programs, eventually they get that gun and badge back. But if you think about somebody in construction who's suddenly told that he's not fit to work, for instance, because of his mental health, that doesn't just affect him; it affects his family and everybody else, because it's his livelihood. The question is, would he have the confidence to put his hand up and ask for help if he knew that wasn't going to affect his prospects going forward?
And that's exactly where the construction stuff is self-employed. I know for sure, and I've been there. People saying that you don't bring your problems to work with you. You're self-employed. You either do your job and go home. And if you're a self-employed worker and you've got 6 weeks on a project, they need everything out of you, then there's no time for you to be there to give your emotions over to them. It's so wrong. It's so wrong.
But we changed the way we worked, didn't we? After speaking to you, we had a set way of working where the employer was the person who paid for your treatment, and that's how it works within the other industries that we were. But where construction was concerned, because there were so many people who were self-employed, we decided that, you know, we would start pricing things differently. We would make it a lot more accessible, so that private individuals could afford to come for the therapy as well. You know, that's made a huge difference, because because we didn't only just keep it to construction. We went right across the board with all the industries, so we're actually cheaper.
The Steve Kerslake payment plan now. Then.
Well, you know, I think we gave you your life back, so you know.
Yeah, so that was literally it, and I will never stop with it, and I think that's the thing with it is, and with the likes of what you guys do behind, and it's purely driven by passion. I think we've said that you guys want to just push what you do to the industry as much as you can, and people probably think, there's a financial incentives. There is zero financial incentives for us. It's just
I've not even done a walk with you so far.
Yeah. Anyone who knows me knows that I've come this far, and it's literally the finance is nothing to do with what I do. It's pure passion, and there's this way that we go. So we've got my construction business as well, what supports me as well. But this is just going in places now that I think it can't not be done. It can't be ignored anymore. I've been to big award ceremonies and it's completely ignored 6-7 weeks ago. And it's disgusting, and things have got to change. And you guys have got the right tools in it. This is what the industry needs as well: is professionals from outside the industry to come in and say we can help you, because we're at the moment, we've got too much on our plates.
You wouldn't ask me to do plumbing, electrical
exactly,
work, or
so why would you
putting bricks together and building a wall, you know. So it's crazy that you think that, you know, anybody can do this.
Out to the specialists, and they start getting specialists involved, and they're seeing the benefits and all that. And always with Harold, we speak with about that a lot, and they've embraced it. And now the fire brigade, who we're playing rugby against in a few weeks' time, they've embraced the military's way, and they're starting to use that for their own benefits. And we've got to do something. They go down that way. Yeah, I think.
But again, it comes back to what I said earlier. That at the end of that process, you decide that somebody has been affected. They've got a mental health problem. They've got symptoms that need addressing. The quality of anything that's proactive is where you now send them.
Yeah, 100%.
Because if your recommendation is that they go to your EAP and do counselling on the telephone to be told our experience is, you know, you're not feeling too well after that railway suicide, come back in 8 weeks when you're feeling better. That's an actual case that we worked on. Or you're signposting to the NHS when you know that millions of people are on a waiting list. You've actually not added anything to the equation. What you need is, and this is, you know, you can call me for nepotism if you like, but what you need is a specialist service provider who you know that you can send that person to. Trust them to make that person better. It doesn't matter if it's SAS-fit. We're not big enough yet to be able to do everybody.
But everyone's a winner then, aren't they?
It's about signposting, Stephen. If you can't
themselves.
signpost somebody to a company that's going to do the job, then all that proactive stuff has just gone out of the window, because it very quickly gets around the workforce that you didn't provide anything that you said you would.
And I think we've seen it now that all these people who go through these traumatic things are probably the strongest people out there in a way, aren't they? There's a lot of people out there.
And they can come back.
And that's why you look at all these high performance people as well. They've all been through something. I think everyone comes back a lot stronger. So when these things do happen, trauma does hit people. That's just a start.
That's a whole different podcast talking about resilience and post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, 100%. We'll save that for your next trip to the UK. Is there anything we haven't touched on, Mark?
No. I think I kind of covered it all, and you know, without pushing boundaries too far. I wanted you to decide where you wanted to go with it.
Yeah, 100%. Like I say, I'm a complete open book.
All I needed to know was that 3 sessions was all it took for Stephen Kerslake to be the different person that you are definitely.
Now. Yeah, for sure. And it's going good actually. I'm still hitting the treadmill. So I'm off from now, heading up north, and got a marathon tomorrow across the mountains. But that's another podcast as well.
Listen to your audios.
100%. No, Mark, absolute pleasure.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a long time coming.
Yes, and where can we find you, Mark? The website, Sassafit?
www.sas-fit.com. Or if you're private and you want to do something that's confidential private, www.happytreat.com. Cool. I'm sure you can put it on the screen or something.
We'll put some technical jargon.
You know, it's all confidential. Whatever you talk to us about stays with us, and so on and so on. If they want to know anything, pick the phone up.
Yeah, perfect. And likewise, if anyone wants to talk to you, just come for us as well. We'll put them straight in touch as well. But pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. And that's the end of our little special edition. And there's no special edition one, so that's all good. There we go. Thank you.